Boa tarde. Muito bem-vindos ao ciclo de conferências Fidelidade na Culturgest. Hoje sobre
cycle of conferences at Culturgest under the topic Diversity and Inclusion. I'd like to call Mr. Campos Henriques, Chair of the Executive Committee of Fidelidade.
Bom, boa tarde a todos.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the second day of Fidelidade conferences, today dedicated to diversity and inclusion. I'm just going to briefly introduce this. We have chosen these topics yesterday and today in a very with a great focus. There are very difficult topics which are treated superficially and without the proper investment. Looking at the quality of the speakers in these conferences, we can realize that we have chosen the hard path of quality. And this choice is difficult, is challenging. We've also chosen as a title of these conferences the verb to change, which implies an immediate action, because quite honestly, we at Fidelidade, we see no alternatives except changing. We have to change, we really have to change, and we all have to change. Businesses, citizens, universities, the government, the whole community. You have to be brave enough to do it now. We have to change now. Under the climate viewpoint discussed yesterday, and after the great speakers we've heard, there's not much to add. The climate emergency is so obvious, so evident, that there is no time to lose. The other day, I read a sentence of a previous CEO of a very well-known world insurance company, which portrays the viewpoint of the insurers. The world 4 degrees warmer, which will be impossible to insure because of all the impacts in our lifestyles. It's a very strong statement, and it says it all. Yesterday's conference was on emergency. Today's on diversity and inclusion is also very much so, because change, no matter climate change or any other change, can only be done by people, by all of us. People will have to be the ultimate promoters of changes in our society. It's truly people who are the trigger for all that has to be done to protect the future. Regarding today's conference, I have great expectations on today's panel. The morning workshops were very good. We're going to discuss creativity and innovation, which are words which are within Fidelidade DNA, which is proud to be innovative for more than 200 years. And then we're going to have a discussion on the role of meritocracy and the difficult balance with the need of diversity within organizations. This is probably will be the most lively panel. And to conclude, we're going to get to know a wonderful project from São Paulo, Brazil. They are a perfect metaphor for the changes that we have to implement in our society. I'm not going to take much of your time. Let me just conclude by saying that Fidelidade wishes to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Here we are, more than 200 years. We believe we have a greater purpose. The purpose is so that life doesn't stop. We, the insurance company, exist so that our life does not stop, does not end. And we believe in social sustainability and the importance that social sustainability has. We support many initiatives in this field with corporate responsibility policies such as our Fidelidade Award, and with strong inclusion policies within our organization, and with business models which are becoming more sustainable. And organizing this conference and such another example of this strong commitment with sustainability and with the change that we'd like to see and incentivize and to become real in society. I hope that this conference will meet your expectations. I wish you all a very fruitful workshop. Thank you.
Pedimos que suba ao palco o senhor.
I'd like to call Mr. Mark de Puta, the chair of the Executive Committee of Culturgest. Hello. On behalf of Culturgest, I'd like to welcome all participants, the public. It's great to have you with us. I'd like to welcome the moderators and the speakers who will be with us in the afternoon. Thank you very much for sharing with us your experiences, your knowledge. I'd like to thank Fidelidade. This is the third conference cycle we organize jointly. 2019 there was a conference cycle on AI, artificial intelligence, and the second one on longevity and demographic changes which are taking place in Portugal and across the world. These conferences were very successful. They were attended by more than 15,000 people, both online and offline. Now here we are discussing two very urgent topics today, which are very important for the future of our life living together in community. Yesterday we discussed climate change. Today we're going to discuss diversity and inclusion. The idea arose from the realization that diversity is which is a reality, which is now present in our societies. Diversity is a characteristic of any society. It's nothing new, but it's true that in the last decades, diversity of our societies in Europe, and not just in Europe, has increased exponentially. We realize that it is a reality that we have to live, to learn how to live, and we have to recognize how important it is. And at the same time, we should recognize that on the inclusion side, we are discussing it more and more politically, socially, on the public agenda. But one must recognize we're still at the very beginning. There's still a great work to be done. So at Culturgest, together with our Fidelidade partners, we're very pleased to be able to discuss these themes with experts and who have experience in these themes. I hope that will be a very inspiring afternoon for us. And again, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Boa tarde.
Hello, welcome. My name is Liliana Coutinho. I'm responsible for the programming of conferences and the debates, and one of the co-curators of this cycle. The general context has already been drawn. I'd just like to, besides welcome you and thanking this collaboration with Fidelidade, which enable us to organize these conferences. There are 2 days with different topics, but from what I've seen in this morning, raised some questions, and I hope that some people who attended these workshops should bring these questions here. I feel like having a 3rd day where these 2 topics are discussed in connection, because the dimension of climate change, of the environment, and the dimension of human diversity are hand in hand. So it's biodiversity in general. I'm passing the floor to Diogo Vieira da Silva, who has experience in thinking about and inclusion and diversity, and we asked him to organize a day around diversity. This is a very large topic. We were able to start discussing some things which we feel like keep on discussing, but we asked Diogo to think together with us a day which should which kick off the discussion on diversity. So I'm passing the floor to Diogo. Okay, my name is Diogo Vieira da Silva. I am the privilege of being a co-curator of this day, of this conference cycle. Let me thank Culturgest for having invited me, and Fidelidade for daring in the Portuguese corporate market, which is somehow conservative, to give the first step and to talk about these issues, which are very oftentimes difficult. How do we, as organizations, as companies, as society, truly a place that includes all? There are several international studies which show this. The last big McKinsey study reflects on how the company with a diversity policy is able to have results between 3.5 to 5% better than its competitors. So it is undoubtedly an opportunity to openly discuss some topics with some discomfort. So what do I mean by this? During the afternoon, with these 2 debate panels, let's talk openly about all topics, about the different perspectives, the different ways of thinking, of acting, of the different types of culture and action. The first panel will show us examples of how the diversity and inclusion policies can truly help change our organizations. These examples are not just a showcase of our own vanity. They show resilience, sacrifice, and ways of overcoming the obstacles put by organizations. Second panel is the confrontation between meritocracy and diversity. Many people have heard within our organizations, schools or associations, we hear say that more than the person, what I care about is whether the person has enough merit, but then merit makes us have all the CEOs of the company should be white, male, heterosexual. So is there a specific merit in them? And we will conclude with a keynote. A young girl, she created the Institute of Meninas Negras in São Paulo. It's a challenge to give a voice to new generations, saying that social change does not happen with the same. We're all the same people, but with all of us. I'm going to pick up a sentence which I truly find amazing, and I will adapt. Diversity is when we invite somebody to the party. Inclusion is when we invite somebody to dance. And a word we forget, which is equity, is when we realize that we not all know how to dance. There are some people who know how to dance since they were young, and others had no such opportunity. So it's very important to talk about equity. More than equality, we have to talk equity. Equality appears 25 times in Portuguese constitution. Equity only appears once because we don't know the difference between them. Equality is something that would enable us to be equal under the law, but equity is what allows us to have the same opportunities and have access to the same opportunities. This is what we're going to discuss here today, because we're talking about freedom to being ourselves, to be creative, and to change. Thank you.
Boa tarde a todos.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this first panel session. Thank you for the invite. I'm Cristina Martins de Barros, responsible for the Institute, the Information on Human Resources, which have IRH magazine, which I advise you to purchase. We are the meeting point for human resources technicians in Portugal. Thank you very much on my behalf and on behalf of IRH magazine. Thank you very much, Fidelidade, for supporting this initiative.
Desafio de conversar.
So that's a challenge of discussing diversity and inclusion within organizations that we know about. Before starting the discussion, I'm going to introduce the members of the panel with excellent study cases to support diversity and inclusion. I agree with you, supporting equity I have Sandro Resende, the founder of Manicómio. It's a space of creation, a social lab for the capacity building, the professional capacity building of people with mental health. Well, it sounds very complex, but Sandro is going to explain what it is. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Welcome. Next, we have Ana-Isabel Sousa from FARFETCH. She works in FARFETCH for the last 9 years. It's a online fashion platform. Thank you for being with us. We have Inês and Silva, founder of Women Business, a fighter in topics of diversity and inclusion. She's also the non-executive member of the board of Almedina. We have Gonçalo, Quadros, CEO of Critical Software, well known for excellent initiatives of diversity and inclusion in Portugal. Thank you very much, Gonçalo, for being with us. And finally, Eduarda Pinto, Executive Director at Lionesa for the last 10 years. Lionesa is a house with 120 companies which works for many countries. The first question is, please explain your companies and tell us what you can do better in Portugal. And on the third stage, I will give the floor to the public for any Q&A. Sandra, please explain what Manicómio is and how inclusive are you? Hello. I see many friendly faces. I'm very pleased. It's not really a conference. It's just a conversation, a friendly conversation. Manicómio has been changing. our DNA from the psychosocial area, we just look at people with talent regardless of their disease. Art is our vehicle, but we included something else. So Manicómio is a space with 15 people with mental disease, with amazing talents and initiatives, and we always value their talent, never the fact that they have a mental disease. In fact, human resource is very important. Manicómio designed a cover for this magazine. Yes, it was amazing. We started working with brands, and we always worked on the side of corporate responsibility and the marketing. And with it's very important so that you truly know about this. Manicómio leaves off the talent that people have and not the disease they have. We've created a design company, work with museums, with galleries. We've organized a cycle of exhibitions with Fidelidade Art, with the support of Anna and Felisbel, which is very important in this process. It was really recognized in terms of criticisms in the critical reviews, which gave some legitimacy to these artists, which they already had, but also in the because of the critical reviews. We work with the United Nations, WHO. I'm not going to say the language, either in the term inclusion or diversity. The question of diversity and inclusion, it's fine, but this is human rights. Each one of us is entitled to this. So this is why we look at the work we carry out. It's a question of human rights, respecting one another. And we're working with this talent in museums, galleries, UN, UNESCO, and with a great deal of activism. We exhibit our works in hospitals, galleries, in different spaces. Talking very much about human rights and not so much about diversity. So they are artists before being artists. They are people. They have their own identity. Sometimes we lose this identity. I'm going to make an analogy with you so that we understand. I'm going to use one as example. If this person has a problem with the eyesight, the parents are going. She goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, "You have a problem with your eyesight. You have to treat it." So she's going to. Well, it says no. This is what we're going to be treated. So in the problem, while you're growing up, the problem with your eyesight is the main problem. So the first time that people come to me, they talk about their disease, but before a disease there is a person, identity, and the talent. And when we do this, we are working with the disease. I don't know if I really explained what is happening. And a FARFETCH, a company, 3,000 workers. How many abroad? We're more than 6,000 workers at worldwide level. We have more than 90 nationalities. So the cultural difference is very spontaneous, is something which is organic. We have a sustainability strategy, and we have a specific area for sustainability within the company, which has a pillar, which is positive inclusion. Jörg talked about equity, so we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the feeling of belonging, very much linked to human rights issues. We have to feel that we are well, we feel well in different cultures. We have a home. And there's still a great deal to do. We are in the United States, in the UK, in Portugal, China, and Japan, in the Middle East, in Brazil. And the level of maturity within these systems differs. So how can we create a global strategy that it makes sense for these regions? As we are saying, positive inclusion is our strategy. When we think about diversity inclusion, we think about to access the business component. FARFETCH is a luxury fashion online platform. We think about the designers we have in our platform, our curatorship, the boutiques we use. So all of this is within the business strategy. And then we have the human resources. And this is everything we can do, initiatives developed so that people feel well. We are very lucky in FARFETCH because it starts with the top leadership. We are lucky to have a CEO, José Neves, which is one of the most humane people I ever met. Most humane persons. And so there is no resistance to this topic, quite the opposite. He is a role model. He's a great role model. Some things become easier when we have an executive leadership which are concerned about these topics. It's much easier to implement them. The projects we have. First of all, we listen to people, truly listen with open hearts. We all have our own biases. We all have our interpretation about others, and we should start in ourselves. We have to question ourselves. I'm a clinical psychologist in training. I have studied biases and the perceptions we have of others. And I have been questioning myself. Maybe we can talk about this, my personal path. Things have to start in us, saying that there is no discrimination, no, there's no racism, there is no discrimination against certain groups, because there is. And sometimes these microaggressions in our jokes, in our popular sayings. So what we've done was listen to people, and we have communities, 10 communities. We have band group Black Employees Network. We have Far Out, a community linked to LGBTQ+. We have Jewish community. We have parents communities, Latino community. We have several communities which have been created. It means that we're a group of people who discuss this topic. It doesn't mean that they are part. For instance, I can be heterosexual but still be part of the LGBTQ+ community, because we can be ambassadors. We all have the ability to stand up for or stand up against some discrimination against these groups. So what do these communities do? They meet, they are independently organized, and they raise questions to discuss, so that we can discuss these for us, a people team. We have senior leaders who, on a monthly basis, are supportive of these communities, and we then realize what are the challenges quite often around this issue. Let me give an example of something which happened coming from the parents group, which had an impact on other communities. The idea is, how can we work, across the communities? A colleague of ours, a woman, had a partner who's also a woman. They were not married. She had a child, and on the legal viewpoint, she was not entitled to have a parental leave. So the parents group raised this question. I mean, the woman didn't say anything. She just went on holidays, and suddenly the parents group, after 2 or 3 months, raised this topic, and we said we can change something. We now have a parental leave for these cases, and not just heterosexuals, for instance, situation when a man and a woman start dating and the woman is pregnant from another man, and her partner would not be entitled to parental leave, but how can we change the ecosystems? So it's not to be able to listen to these communities and to be able to act accordingly.
Then we have other questions for younger profiles. We're a technological company that we work in the area of fashion and technology, and we know that there are fewer girls or women in technology. Typically, there are more men. Here we can't solve anything because it's men who come out of more men come out of a university. So we can demystify the fact that engineering is a man's profession. It's possible for a woman to be an engineer in IT or any other area. So it's very easy to say that we can't find women because they don't leave the university. So what we can do is we can go to the basis of this ecosystem so that in a couple of years' time we can actually change this system. And it's been very interesting because there are many girls at the end of high school, and they said, FARFETCH helped me choose engineering in university because I wasn't sure I was. And maybe just one more, because we have lots of other initiatives. We have training on diversity, equity, inclusion for everybody in the company to promote that idea. So there's biases that we can't change. And so what we can do is we can become aware of them and know that up to in a certain context we have a certain bias, and we should be more aware of the situation. We have perceptions and we create perceptions very quickly. At the moment we have a sponsorship, it's not mentoring, it's sponsorship for minorities. It's a pilot for the black community, and we have senior leaders where so we're talking about dance performance groups. So we have 10 people globally, and from the black community we have a senior leader who has a sponsorship. And what's the role of the sponsor? To be able to identify and create support networks for these people. And then you ask, of course, this is what to do with the path followed and why blacks and not others. There is no program or that is only for everybody, that's unique for everybody. If you think of your development, there's several programs on leader and say empathy, this, that, and the other, but the importance of seeing specific programs for given communities is important because the needs are different, and so those who are on the other side don't understand this because they never have experienced this. And so this question of opportunities we must create for people, it's not going first, it's not skipping the cure. It's having a positive action. It is to create opportunities and to create a context for people to able to flourish. Thank you very much, Anna, for the example of FARFETCH. And so we'll move on to Inês, who works in a specific area, which is women in technology. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. My experience is a little bit different. 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, I was in the university, and I thought it was very strange when I went to a number of technology events. I studied in the Porto, and I like technology and entrepreneurship, so taking its first steps. And so I thought it was very strange when I was the only woman in many of the events I participated in. But people say like they don't like it. And I thought, this doesn't make any sense. If I was there and I enjoyed it, surely there'd be other women in other situations that would like to be present too. So I started by participating in a number of events here in Portugal, and also did it abroad. But in 2016, I was a bit tired of the fact the situation was the same, so I created Portuguese Women in Tech, which is to support women who are working in technology. So how can we create opportunities that is visibility to more women in the area, and to help the women in the area, and what should be done in terms of schools. Because it's funny that we all forget how we took the decision of what we were going to be when we grew up. We wake up one morning and it's right, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be an engineer, and that is something doesn't have maths. Some people are like that. I like the maths. So my mother is a maths teacher, so I had to like it. The truth is that the decision we make is influenced by our environment, and so it defines what we're going to be when we grow up. I saw my mother was a teacher, and so I said I don't want to be a teacher. So my mother influenced me negatively about what I wanted to be, but quite often what they say, and what Anna would say, the girls and so they don't like technology. But the truth is that we have to understand that that is not true, and they were very surprising that the first people to program computers were women and not men, because programming was for women and hardware was for men. The separation is very well defined, but things started changing at a certain time in our history. It was defined that in order to be a good programmer, had to be somebody who liked puzzles, that didn't like other people, and they liked to work alone at night. So there's no scientific validity in this definition. We see people in companies that have this profile, they get excellent, and then others with very different profiles are very extroverted, they like other people, and they have excellent results in the profession. My work in Portuguese Women in Tech has been to demystify these ideas that we have, that is, what does it mean to work in technology, to bring more information. It's very interesting to see that when we talk to you, so you have no idea what it means to work in technology. Boys like gaming. The girls don't like it because they say the game is not for them, so they end up by not wanting it. So I do a lot of this work, and so that is to raise awareness in organisation. That is what measures and ideas can be implemented in order to promote different inclusive companies with a greater spirit of belonging. So when we started in 2016, we didn't talk about this topic so much. We started talking, but not much. And since then, we clearly feel that there has been a great leap in terms of talking about diversity. I talk about gender diversity. Of course, diversity is much more than this, but I talk about diversity in gender. And so today, we do a lot more. Companies are a lot more apt. But more recently, this year I launched a new project because we end up by thinking diversity, think of talent. So when you work in an organisation, we have to think how we can support them to have a different diverse organisation for the people to do their best, to feel good, to have a good quality of life. But the truth is that organisations can do more than this. And so I launched the project, which is Women.Business, because I discovered a statistic which just 30% of companies in the world are held by women. In Portugal, it's 32%, but only 1% of the purchases of goods and services by large companies go to from companies belonging to women. So these big companies have the ability to influence the market, that is, but to buy products, goods and services, and so the ecosystem is local, and you can promote more business, but businesses held by women are not taking advantage of these opportunities. Business held by women are more to the B2C, and so they don't have an opportunity to sell to companies or big companies, and so the smaller businesses usually, and so they are not funded and they depend more on family networks or other types of networks, which helps them go further, but still it's possible to make the difference. So we have to challenge companies to see how, when you consult in the market, how can they put forward proposals. To make 4 proposals, and one of them is actively made by a company held by women. It's a new topic in Portugal. I've spoken to quite a few companies and who are aware of the subject in the United States. There is a major tradition in this topic of buying minority-owned businesses and women. So the women are the minority, so they're included in this minority-owned businesses. And so there are objectives to buy from companies owned by women, and I want to bring this culture to Portugal and see how we can work in this. So there's still a lot to do, but how there's always a lot to do in the area of talent. And 10 years ago it would be impossible to have this conversation we're having today. So in the years to come, this will be one of my sites. So those who work in human resources know that we have only talked about the talent war. That is how to achieve talent. And so I know that Gonçalo is going to give us good examples of inclusion. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure being with you. I'd like to thank Culturgest for the invitation. Able to Critical Lab is a technological company. It's a typical university spin-off. The company was founded in 1998, I believe. There are 3 people doing a PhD in the University of Coimbra at a time when we didn't talk about startups, nor spin-offs in universities, and which came from a very specific context. It wasn't a world which we had examples. We had to create this project without many references and a very male context. It was mentioned by Inês and Anna, and it still is. A lot can still be done in this area. And in my course, there was 100. I'm another technical engineer. There were 3 women, and I should say that my daughter is an electrotechnic engineer, and she's the only woman in her course. So in 25 years, there's been no change in this. And I would like to say that diversity and inclusion. To talk about diversity is to talk about inclusion. Was always a very important topic for us, not only the way we look at the world, it's obvious, the social fabric, equity, equal opportunity are parts and aspects that we have to look at when we run a company. Also, because obviously we're in a very competitive world and we need to guarantee the maximum performance, the best performance in the company. There's no doubt at all, besides promoting diversity and inclusion, can we not aspire to anything in any aspect of our company? Noted in case of critical, and in the example of the companies that exist today, there are 2 essential pillars for us to be competitive. One is knowledge and the other is creativity. To build knowledge, promote competitiveness is key in this battle of competition. To build knowledge means interaction, share, discussion, argumentation, counter-arguments. It means curiosity. For the ideas that people bring. Be curious about all this. If we're all thinking the same way, we would not create this interaction and these arguments and counter-arguments and this sharing, which is essential to build knowledge. And the same happens with creativity. If we want to promote creativity, it is not possible to be creative if there is no interaction. Disruptive interactive, is good to see that those who are creative, if they have a very routine life, if they don't have the opportunity to think in a different way, if they do not feel that in the community they belong, that it doesn't accept their ideas or says their ideas are too disruptive, then if they feel this, there's an eclipse. And so it's a construction of knowledge and the promotion of creativity in any community that is correlated with this factor, which is diversity. And maybe for this reason I could say that one of the first steps that we took within an organization like ours in this promotion was inbreeding, fighting inbreeding rather. That was a very obvious topic for me because I came from a university, and inbreeding in a university is terrible, even today. And we thought that this inbreeding, which is the opposite of diversity, happens naturally in the context of which is the Portuguese context is what we knew. And the extremes emerge within a community, that is a number of people who get on very well because they think in the same way and they look at things in the same way. And so for us, it was very important to guarantee that this didn't happen, and this meant that we had to refresh, renew, and guarantee that we will not keep our positions unchanged. So we have to fight the cult of personality, our personality cult, and to promote the opening of teams to people who come from the outside. And quite often I've seen, look, we have a very strong culture. It's very difficult to bring anybody from the outside because they don't adjust to our culture. So there are good reasons and we should be proud of having a strong culture, but our culture must be able to embrace people who come from outside and share the values. They are therefore going to find space to continue to construct this culture, and they bring us visions, experiences, which can improve what we are, promote our ability to grow, and to guarantee that we're a creative society. And so this concern, this context was very present. That is to renew, to risk everything around us, to guarantee that nobody remains unchanged. This cannot be unwelcome. So we have difficulty in accepting this. We deserve to be well known, and we want to. This is being eternal, lifelong. Once we reach an important situation, and so what we are saying is, this is obviously recognized, but it has to be a path we follow, and nothing that can make a leader proud. Seeing better leaders emerge around him. That is what really mobilizes leadership and characterizes a good leader. And so together with this, we were following a number of initiatives. When there was programs of requalifications, we requalified people, and I think we've requalified over 500 people. Sometimes they've got nothing to do with training or mass and linked to the University Coimbra Porto. So we give these skills, the necessary skills, to people. And so there are many people who have different experiences, because a way of fighting this idea of tribes. And the other, we have a program Neurodiversity, which is a neurodiverse program regarding talent, and there is a great stigma in relation to neurodiversity, which marginalizes these people who are very talented. So we went from a Danish foundation that specialized in doing this. We started the program with Then Critical last year, and this year we have a second edition involving other companies. So we managed to create trust, because we had a program that had already been implemented, and last year we included in our teams 7 neurodiverse people, and we wanted to train and integrate 15 people in different companies. Critical number 4. In here notes that we are not only integrating neurodiverse people, as we are formatting the way we see people. Because one of the major difficulties with the construction of neurodiverse teams is the way we communicate, the way we talk to them, the way we understand how they see what is happening outside. Difficulties of this type of communication, we have to understand certain reactions, and we have to guarantee that what we want to say is well understood, and the relation with these aspects is very special, and that improves everybody, and it improves us all as people, as managers of people, and this has been included. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to manage the time. Your experiences, and we heard you talk about this before, is absolutely fabulous. But I would say that you went to get neuroatypical people's Asperger, autists, Asperger's, people with Asperger's syndrome, and these are people who their intelligence is above average normally, and they're very good to concentrate on certain tasks, and so they're very narrow-minded, and you have given them the training to be programmers in Coimbra. Yeah. They're not from Coimbra, obviously. And so it's a unique program in Portugal, and so it's something. I have an Asperger, a son who has Asperger, so it really, it's close to me, it's very dear to me, and it's got a lot of great potential, and congratulations to Critical. They're remarkable people, and they have a number of skills which are not easy to find. They look at detail, they recognize patterns, but they're loyal. They're absolutely spectacular. So I got one at home. So to conclude, we are working on Speak. It gives us a lot of confidence in inclusion and diversity, so we want to involve the whole of the community to say, okay, we have been doing this, and so this is an ongoing process. What we're going to do, we'll see. We'll go back to that.
120 empresas, 7.000 pessoas, 46 nacionalidades.
So, Lionesa, thank you for the invitation. We are a business hub, but more than being a place to work, is a place to live. We have more than 120 companies, more than 46 nationalities. It means that diversity is here. The question is to realize whether we work inclusion or not. Although we are on real estate, we understood, we realized that people have to be where talent is. So our focus is on people, on talent. This has become a passion. And today our mission is to promote the sustainable happiness within this business hub. To promote happiness means to promote social sustainability, meaning promote inclusion and diversity. We created a tool, the happiness pyramid, and although it works in different approaches, we work on infrastructures. The green spaces are the working areas, the offices, interpersonal relationships, and the initiatives we organized with external stakeholders, academia, and others. When we think about happiness and working on happiness, we realize that happiness has a true impact upon creativity and productivity. And to promote happiness implies promoting inclusion. So we have 46 nationalities. How could we work inclusion? We are lucky to have companies such as FARFETCH and Oracle, which have its own culture, which are catalysts which challenge us to do better. We'd have to somehow let these nationalities be known and share their culture in different initiatives. The different initiatives we organize, we have those which aim to let them know the culture. For instance, on Wednesday, we have show cooking. Each one has a dessert from their own culture. So we start immediately a conversation about what is typical, what is happening in Spain or Italy or Brazil. We have initiatives promoting some speakers. For instance, a topic of women at the workplace.
Do tempo, nós fomos trabalhando.
Across time, we have been working on diversity and inclusivity that promotes happiness, because happiness is at the base of everything we do, and art is another component. When we study the impact art had upon people, it was brutal. It's top 2 of the dopamine production. It means that we are much happier when we access art. So to promote art of different cultures and to promote inclusion of many people who are in the business hub and other organizations which we invite to show their projects, different ethnic groups and minority groups, so that the community could work together on inclusion. Well, this implies that our infrastructure is also inclusive for some minorities. Recently, we promoted a new project in an outdoor area which is similar to a university campus, because we know that the transition from universities to companies, talents are lost because young people do not find in companies an atmosphere which is similar to what they were used to. So we made a huge mistake. Suddenly, we see somebody with reduced mobility because although this space complied with all the existing legislation, it was sort of a labyrinth. It was, of course, a difficult course to go through because we had several obstacles. We have to put ourselves in other people's feet, and we have to bring them on board, and we have to think about them every step of the way. And the work that Nina talked about in universities, we have several protocols and projects with universities. Both companies in Lionesa and universities will promote meeting points. So companies promote this culture and give some examples of what is happening indoors. So they show university students about the inclusion projects and the, for instance, possibility of women being in the tech area, and also universities coming to Lionesa and disseminating the work that I developed. Thanks, Eduarda. We've seen that there are great examples to move on in this path. About 1.5 years in our magazine, we have made a study on diversity and inclusion in partnerships with Sair da Casca, a consultant. The conclusion was companies are becoming, have more and more diversity. They invite different people, they invite them to come to the party, but when we invite people to dance, where are these people? Just like the law which makes having women in the board of the big companies, and it happens. I have friends in this case. So you just invite a woman to sit on the board. The board of directors, just to comply with the quota. So we have to, we should not just welcome diversity, because the law obliges us to have 2% of people with disabilities, but what is the next step? Let's not just follow the law, not because it looks good in the sustainability report, or it looks great to say that we are inclusive. When are we going to give power to these people, for everybody? Well, in fact, we never had this problem, never thought of filling the quota, but you need to have normal people, of course. This question is not for me, sure. For those who have the formal companies, it's so provocative. So what is normal people? Because we all have our idiosyncrasies. What it is to be normal? What is this, being normal?
Eu acho que esta questão da equidade é muito importante.
The question of equity is very important. When, for instance, let's think about genders. You have an application for the same role, a man or a woman, and one gender is more competent than the other. Well, this is when things start being biased. It's important to give opportunities, but then when we make decisions, we have to be fair. This is not organic.
Compreender o que é que está a acontecer e
we have to understand what is taking place, and in the life cycle of a company,
determinados momentos.
So this is what we've been doing, which is quite controversial in the United States or UK. It's normal that in a process of application, people ask questions about the ethnic group, about sexual orientation, the educational background. And it's normal because we have to understand within a pipeline of recruitment of applicants from the moment we receive the applications, going through the interview stage until the decision is made. It's very important to understand whether we lose people in the way, or to understand whether this is a company which is attractive to certain people. Whereas in Portugal, when we launched this idea, there was chaos. Why are you asking about this? We are discriminating. But this is not our intention. We do not know who the person is, but we have to understand in the pipeline where things are happening so that we can act. So if we don't have applications from women, we have to understand what is happening to go back to the ecosystem and to solve this and start being more appealing for more women to apply. So this is how important this is. We have a questionnaire, internal questionnaire, to understand who we are. Why? Because if we wish to create unique moments and a space which must be psychologically safe. Let me give an example. Something really interesting happened this week. We have the onboarding of new people every 2 weeks. We have a global onboarding. There are senior leaders talking on the first day. This week, I was the one who spoke. We discussed 3 big concepts. One is our values, the importance of culture and the core values, because we must have some core values, and in FARFETCH are the values. It's non-negotiable, and companies have non-negotiables as well. Values, respecting others. So I talk about values, and then I go into the creating psychological safe spaces for people to be able to speak and for innovation to happen, and connected to health and well-being. If some people or minorities do not feel that this is happening, it's going to have an impact in terms of their mental health. The question I raise is, what is the commitment of these new members, of these new employees, in terms of creating safe spaces and their own well-being? There was somebody saying, well, I'm not going to take myself seriously. We can have an informal atmosphere of playing around with one another. And he said, he quoted a popular saying referring to gypsies. And there was another person who said, I'm a gypsy. So the way you said this, quoted this saying, have an impact on me, because you're comparing a gypsy with a donkey. This was something which happened on the very moment, and the person said, well, I have to apologize because I've never realized what this saying meant. You know, we have some popular sayings which are deeply rooted in people. So just have to create these spaces of people to openly discuss these situations. And then in terms of promotion, salary increase, and career progression, there should be moments of understanding what is happening. We do this after we decide on promotions. We sometimes challenge. You know, there's a group who's never been promoted, so it's a positive discrimination. No, it's not positive discrimination. Sometimes it's correct because the person may not be prepared to be promoted for a salary increase, but at least we raise this question: why? There is no positive discrimination. And there's a story that I'd like to share with you. At the beginning of the week, I was moderating a debate in a very big auditorium, and at the end there was a question. And I said, Just wait a moment, because the girl is giving you the mic. I saw a boy, a young man, bringing the mic. So it's and his name was Eduarda. It's a very important point, because in our daily life we don't understand how many times we all, being more or less aware of this topic, how often we have this impact. Maybe we can talk about companies, but it's important that we should think individually what can be done. Sometimes I say, when we are in our mother's womb, we are already stereotyped. We are already being told what to do or not to do. When my mother was pregnant, said that I moved a great deal, people said she's going to be a dancer. In fact, I ended up by playing soccer, so this is not, I didn't become a dancer. But so the child is born. So if the boy says, she's energetic, and if it's a girl, she has to be very peaceful. But I have cousins who are very active, and I incentivize this activity.
Qual é a primeira vez que vocês ouvem?
When you're going to school, the first time that has a girl, women who are famous in the history of Portugal. Okay, we have a woman who was very important in the Battle of Aljubarrota, and then Queen Maria I, Queen Mary II. We skip very rapidly through this stage of Portuguese history. We are saying girls, we're telling girls that in the history, Portuguese history, there is no example for them. We are telling boys and girls what they can or cannot do. Recently I was in a training on diversity and inclusion, and the trainer said he had 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, and the boys were great in maths, and the girl was not good. So she realized something really interesting. He spent much more time with boys studying math than with the girl. Why? Because he believed that boys were really good at math and girls didn't like it. So consciously he decided to say, I'm going to spend the same time with the girl. After these 2 months, the girl had excellent grades in math. So the way we behave, the way we approach others, we are telling them what they can or cannot do, what they're good at or not good at. We do not make decisions in isolation. The context is really important. We're talking about quotas. I'm in favor of quotas. I believe we should have quotas. No quota says that women have to be there. Quotas say that there has to be gender diversity. If there are no men in a board of directors, well, we must have at least 1 man. A list to a borough or to a town hall in Portugal was prohibited because there are only women in it. I have an interesting joke. I have a German friend. She has a 3-year-old girl who, to become a chancellor, you have to be a woman, because she only knew Angela Merkel as chancellor. How many of us ask this question? We do not know any woman prime minister. We had one for 6 or 7 months, not elected. She was appointed. The fact that we are surrounded by a context which does not, rather, which promotes certain behaviors which have an impact during our lifetimes. At a corporate level, this is very important, but we have to be really careful what we say, be it with some proverbs. They're not just wrong, socially speaking, but for instance, you have to be careful about quoting animals, the problems with animals. We have a particular care with animals nowadays. To conclude, I organized trainings on discrimination. I was in a room with men and women and asked who have felt discriminated. You may not believe, but only men felt discriminated. had 15 people, all men felt discriminated and women never felt discriminated. But you might think, what happened? Men have felt discriminated because of their age. They were in a company, traditional company, and they felt that the age issue was a big problem. Women are not discriminated because they're so used to being treated badly that they didn't even realize. And after discussing a bit, they realized that there were, in some moments, there was some discrimination, but they believed that it was just normal. So this is what has to be changed. There's a great deal to be done. It's endless. Inês, you say it's so important. There's a time when we are afraid of saying something because we believe that we're going to insult somebody. There's this concept of safe spaces. We're all going to say things which are going to be offensive to somebody. But if we create this safe and open space and we are willing to change and show that we are on the development path, this is when things work. It's just not, point, to one another and complain about everything because you don't feel like talking because we are being afraid.
Essa responsabilidade que nós temos também, todos.
And so it's a common responsibility. We have to keep some common sense. You can't just think about every sentence we're going to say because it will block. It will be an obstacle to our communication. Gonçalo, would you like to add something? Touch upon something which is relevant. Diversity has merit. I know that this is a topic which will be discussed later on. When we talk about quotas, are they going to collide, oppose the merit that we should promote in our companies? Diversity has got merit, and these merits, we have to be authentic. When I say I believe in diversity, so I really have to apply these principles. The fact that we believe in diversity. I read some time ago an article in The Economist. Very interesting experiment. Some decades ago, 40 years ago, there were quotas for men, for kindergarten teachers. All the kindergarten teachers were women. And they believed that there should also be men. And precisely because of the merit, because there were women who did not fill these vacancies because of these quotas, 20 years ago they put an end to these quotas and they have no quotas. After all these years, they've seen the impact of both systems. They concluded that the impact had been very positive when there were quotas. At the time I read the article, they didn't conclude exactly why, but there was an obvious impact. And probably if we look at this, a bit like Anna was saying, we feel some discomfort in our companies because if I want to promote diversity, or if I want to use quotas, or because I genuinely believe I like to have a team with greater diversity, maybe I will feel constrained. For instance, if the person is doing an excellent job, why am I going to change? I'm going to change because there is a different energy, a potential of approaching things differently, which adds value. There is a different speed, something which is different. Because I'm promoting diversity within the organization. And this is something which I believe that we're not always prepared to deal with. This is my experience. The question of merit is too often discuss when we talk about diversity, and it has consequences on our ability to promote said diversity. Fine. So, passing the floor to the public. Somebody from the public?
Não sei se tem um microfone ou se... Sim, sim. Eu não digo, também há rapazes que levam microfones. Não, eu já não me atrevi, já reparou, já aprendi, já não digo mais menina.
I'd like to share one experience in a project I was involved
O equilíbrio de género na investigação.
having to do with gender balance in scientific research involved hundreds of women. I participate in events where there were dozens of researchers, high-performing professionals in important roles in research institutes and universities, but strangely enough, practically all women mention examples of cases where they have been discriminated, but only one amongst dozens considered that this was actual discrimination. So the interesting thing, and I wrote about this at the time, the overwhelming majority of women participating in the schedule where I was. They use the discrimination they've been submitted to as a medal of honor. They said, well, they tried not to promote me. I was not promoted the first time around, second time around, because I was good enough. I was able to surmount these obstacles. This is a terrible example, because there is discrimination, sometimes true abuse, which is not spoken about, and it's essential that these should not be omitted openly. A question to ask to Inês. I was in a situation when I had to purchase products and services to companies and make consultations to companies. How do I know which are the companies which are owned by minority groups or by women? We don't have, where can you get this basic information about companies? We all know how difficult it is to look for companies with a given profile. We are lucky because the Ministry of Justice has data regarding all companies in Portugal. If we have the tax number of the company, we know the owners of the company, or the minutes of the board of directors. Even in limited companies, we know exactly who are the owners of the company, the shares they own, and the managers. This is available online. What we did in Women.Business was creating a database where we already have this information. We have more than 100 businesses which are owned by women, and we prove that this is true because of the information which is made available on the Justice portal. Let me make a comment in relation to your question. I've read some studies showing that we have some different expectations regarding boys and girls at school. When a boy is a great student, we say he's really very bright. When the girl is a very good student, say, well, she studies a lot, because we are incentivized to work and to study and work hard. So this is why women are volunteers to take notes of the meeting and do the sort of work that's not so much admired, and women and men don't do it so much. Women are incentivized to work hard, to prove that they're able. It may take longer, but they're going to get there. And sometimes they use this as a matter of honor. I was able to do it. In conversations I have, it's a big obstacle, because women say, if I could, everybody can do it. I was able to overcome, I was able to get there, so everybody can. But it's not really the case. In Portugal, we don't talk about privilege. We believe that we're all equal, but in fact it's not true. We live in completely different atmospheres and social economic contexts which help us more or less during our lifetime. And I believe that we have to recognize that we are in some situations because of the privileges. Because we have a very stable family which is very supportive. The privilege can be, anything. We have to recognize that the person next to us may not have had the same privilege. And these questions make very difficult discussions on diversity and inclusion, because many women come to me and say, I'm against quota, I'm against everything, because if I can do it, everybody can.
Well, that's not really the case, and so we've talked a lot about women, but there are other aspects that exist in company. I talk to many human resource managers, and so we favour the Catholic, the different universities in Portugal, and so whoever was born in Bragança, Faro, Guarda, or any other city. Here there's a discrimination. It's a discrimination belonging to the university, which is one of the greatest problems of their becoming part of the labour market. It's not. It's the universities are a form of discrimination, terrible discrimination for those who want to be part of the labour market. Another discrimination that we've seen is age. After 50 years old, I don't know if you've noticed, but many people disappear. If you're over 50 years of age, it's very difficult and complicated. And so there are many, many more aspects. And so I would ask Sandro, because he's behaving himself so well, so quiet. You have one of the greatest stigma. You work with people that have the biggest stigmas. That is, you're an agency, you work with any other agency. You work with people who have mental health problems. Cara, and so you can get to the Manicómio through them. So it's funny, you're talking about this and the number of companies here, and creating companies. We coach with companies. Some have excellent mental health that we have to work on. We have a very close relationship with them. We have managed to work very well, but I can give you an example of many companies who said they do a design and they fulfill the requirements that we're looking for. So I I'm responsible for Manicómio. I can say that these companies, it's not going to happen. Never mind, regardless of the money they want to give us or the shop window they want to give us. So we work with any art project, but it makes a sense that once again it's for our added value. We only work with a company if we can give value to the company. It doesn't make any sense just because of the social responsibility or because the company has to fill in the course of mental health. And so we do work with them. Because they want to talk about this topic very superficially. I'm not saying it's not serious, but it's not enough for us. And this is our work when we work with companies. It's not educating, but making them aware that only by adding value and equality and equity, I mean, we have to be in the same standing as companies and with people who work with us, and on the same standing when we have an exhibition. I have a lot more stigma when I make an art exhibition. I did all the exhibitions, arts and dances in Juliet. I worked with the best artists in the world, Jeff Koons, etc. But when I'm going to make an exhibition, even though I'm not saying it's mental health, even though I don't say this, I expect to see the work of a sick person, and our risk is always greater. So It's the detail. So we must make sure we're not just superficial. And this is the work we do with the companies we work with exhibitions, etc. We always have this concern of human, social, artistic, and financial dignity. And people forget the financial aspect. The financial dignity is very important. And we have, there are prizes, awards. We have the Fidelidade, I like it very much, I won it. And so there is something which I consider very important. That awards have to be rethought. These are ones I sort of, I think of, these are the population we work. But if there's no talent in the population, then we don't really gain anything. I think people who make awards here in Portugal, Fidelidade, BP, etc., have to think about this aspect, that is teams, the teams that work with this population, they have to fight talent. We must keep this talent. We have to pay fair, we have to have a quality, transparency, we have to be challenged. And so the team that works with these people has to be constantly motivated, and much more motivated than a normal company to have this. And these awards don't really support this. There's a value for the teams, but it's never enough. And so people have to be paid as a normal company, or above the average. It's very simple. Fortunately, things are changing a little bit, but people take the money sort of from some trees, so they have to be supported. I'm saying that nowadays they've been supported when there's no talent, but you're saying there has to be talent. Sometimes we have to use our own money. We don't have to be dependent, but the awards that they make in the future have to think of this format. The talents that these people generate they have to talent. We have very competitive with them, and we only do this when we're working. And sometimes that's for a low price because they say that it's a person with mental health problems had made it. Any questions? Good afternoon. I agree with the angle that Gonçalo Quadros, the value of diversity, but I would like to know whether you're concerned, you have the same concern as me, the excessive political correctness in terms of this, like that story of the donkey and the gypsy. Isn't this an attack at diversity? Not being able to speak? Excellent question. I think we have to have common sense, just like in anything. But Gonçalo, what would you like to say? I think this is a challenge. That is when we create a community, and this community is based on certain biases, references, and to talk about these questions and to get the community and people to think about different arguments. It is a challenge, as I said. It's a challenge in which is the merits of diversity. So in order to do things in a very well-balanced manner is a challenge. There are no recipes. And we need to test a number of approaches and understand the best way to guarantee a certain result. And quite often we use our own experience about things that happen in our own lives. And we try and replicate them, mimic them, and quite often it doesn't work. So that happens a lot. And I think that you're right. In many circumstances I see there's not a negative load I'm sure there was no negative load, and now everybody attributes this negative load, but now people do. But there's a side effect, which is positive. That is, it forces people to think differently in terms of the way they address or uses this proverbs that they were always used to using. We begin to think in a different way. It's not a bad result. It'd be a bad result if there is a context which can place the actor of the circumstances in a position he doesn't deserve to be in. And so for the community, we have to think about this. I know I have this experience, and I'm convinced, and so diversity has merit on its own, and I've seen this happen in my life, and I can tell you we have critical software, the parent company. The group always grew well, and suddenly, some years ago, we merged with BMW, I believe, and so we managed to make a joint venture, which actually came about. And so we managed to promote people from our critical software at the time, and they went to the new company that was being created. Now, what we thought when this happened, we thought this is an opportunity to renew critical software and to create an energy and a new ambition, which can be very interesting. But there was another attitude to think that changing this could be very bad for the company. And so what we did was we promoted this as an opportunity to diversify and renew things, revitalize things. And the result was good, I believe the gentleman said. If I wasn't available to say this, I'm not saying that this is the way to do it, about things. Things have to be thought of on a case-by-case basis. And but what I'm saying is that if we don't believe that diversity has merit per se, we're going to be conditioned when we take a decision. We're not going to invest in a thing we don't know just because we want to make want to think differently. There are always good arguments not to do it, and this is the point that I would like to highlight. Thank you very much. I don't think I'd add anything. It was an excellent end. We have come to the end of our time. I would like to thank you all for your participation in this table. Thank you very much for being here and listening to you. I hope that this has made a positive contribution to your lives. Thank you very much, everybody.